Well, this question came up again this week about women as pastors. Well, I did a Google search, and this seems to be basically across every religion or every Christian denomination. There's questions, and you can look at Fuller EDU, Women's Ministry, Resolution on Ordination and the Role of Women in Ministry from SBC.net. They got a YouTube video on it. Can women be pastors or deacons? Can women be pastors and preachers? What the Bible actually probably is going to say what the Bible says. This is from BibleStudyTools.com. Okay, this is December 23rd, 2019, so it's pretty recent. The Bible revelation of the relationships of men and women, those who are called to be in the office of pastor, to those who will be called. So you can look at another Bible study. You can do a little bit of comparison. And basically, here's an interesting one. Women pastors, what does the Bible say? Okay, this is the ChristianPost.com. This is May 4th, 2019. So it's a hot topic right now. And let me begin by saying that I know and appreciate many women who have been recognized as pastors, but in their passion to promote women. And here we got another one. CHP, whatever that is, Women Pastors, 3rd edition. So they're going through this for the 3rd time. Okay, we're going to take a look at what the Bible actually says. Up here, we're basically, I saw this up over here, resolution on ordination. Okay, it says Titus 2, 1 through 10. He excludes women from pastorship. And this is a popular interpretation of the Bible, and we're going to take a look at this. I'm going to flip over to Esor. We're going to go over to actually we're going to look at bishop, and basically we just do a quick search on here. This is Esor. You hit the little binoculars, it'll open up a search window. You can enter in the word you're searching for and it'll take you to it. So here we are. We're in First Timothy 3. And the problem with this one is people read too much into the Bible sometimes. You got to be the judge. This is a trustworthy saying. If someone aspires to be an elder, he desires an honorable position. So an elder must be a man whose life is above reproach. He must be faithful to his wife. He must exercise self-control, live wisely, and have a good reputation. He must enjoy having guests in his home, and he must be able to teach. He must not be a heavy drinker or be violent. He must be gentle, not quarrelsome, and not love money. He must manage his own family well, having children who respect and obey him. For if a man cannot manage his own household, how can he take care of God's church? An elder must not be a new believer, because he might become proud and the devil might cause him to fall. Basically, this is translated from the NLT, and you can see we have quite a different interpretation from, let's say, the King James. This is a true saying. If a man desire the office of bishop, you can see the NLT used elder, and here the original King James used bishop. He desires a good work. Bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife. And this is where we get into this controversy here. The husband of one wife, diligent, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. He must not be given to wine, no striker, not greedy of filthy liquor, but patient, not a brawler, not covetous. one that rules well his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. For if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? Well, basically, people take this little sentence here, the husband of one wife. Well, we know back in Paul's time, it was common for men to have more than one wife. And Paul, Jesus the author of this book, knew that eventually some Jews would be getting into the church and start putting people in charge. It was a battle between getting good, faithful Christians in charge of the church and having the Jews come in and basically try to take over and eventually merge the Christian church into their Jewish philosophy. Well, obviously, it wouldn't be very hard for the Jews to prove that they could have more than one wife by going back into the Bible and saying, look at David, look at Solomon, look at I think even Samuel. I'm not sure about Samuel, but Abraham wound up remarrying. And there were others. I mean, they could come up with countless examples showing that God's leaders had more than one wife. Well, so something had to be inserted. The husband of one wife. Well, okay, so people take that out and they say, well, that proves it has to be a man. Well, let me tell you, Paul would look pretty ridiculous if he included another line on here that said, or a wife of one husband. Man, if that went out, imagine what the Hebrews would have done with that. Taking a look at that, they would have said, well, obviously Paul's been teaching in strange lands, picking up strange things, and they would have created a whole society of some Amazon women that were dominating their community and marrying more than one man. And I mean, the Jews to slam down the Christians would have created a whole unknown fictitious society to focus on one line if Paul would have included the wife of one husband. Think about that. Does that make sense? Okay, so we got to take the Bible for what it says. We can't be reading stuff into it, and we can't say, well, okay, this definitely says you have to be a man. It doesn't say that. Matter of fact, we got to take a look at what's the definition of a bishop. Okay, we just click over here, we go over to King James Plus, we look at the concordance. We can just click on this number, we can open up the dictionary, and episkopos. Okay, and this comes from a couple other Greek words. First of all, it comes from 1909, which is epi, a primary preposition, properly meaning superimposition of time, place, order, as a relation of distribution with the genitive case, that is, over, upon, etc., of rest, with the dative case, at, on, etc. So basically it means upon or superimposition. Alright, you have to look that one up to get a little bit, but that's the beginning of the word. The second part is the kopos, because it's made up of these two words. In other words, this is a title given to them, made up of two words. And kopos comes from another word, to peer about, perhaps akin to 4626, through the idea of concealment. Means to watch, a sentry, a scout. That is by implication a goal. Alright, now we're getting someplace. Alright, we're going to look up this 46, 49, because we want to get into this more basic meaning. 4649, so we got to take out this G 4649. We're going to enter it in here. This is actually from another Greek word. See how these Greek words blend in here? We just can't take what's on the surface. We got to dig deep if we're going to find out what the Bible says. And it's perhaps akin to 4626 through the idea of concealment. Compared to 4629, it means a watch, a sentry, or a scout. It is by implication a goal, a mark. Now this is perhaps akin, so it may or may not be. This is their best guess. Apparently a primary verb, to dig. Okay, so what are we getting out of a bishop? Someone that digs holes? Is it a sentry? Basically, what we're looking at is the bishop is a leader of the church. And we got to take a look at it and leave it at that. Or basically, if we go back and we're going to take a look at these two, this is going to take a little while to redraw. Over here, translated elder, where they got that word from, translators of the NLT decided to make it. And over here they use the office of bishop. They translate it as. So what do we got? We don't have a whole lot right now. But let's go back. When was the priesthood actually created in the Bible? A lot of people are going to answer, well, that was someplace in Exodus where God gave Moses the command of a priest, and the first priest was Aaron and his sons, so obviously those were men, and obviously we got to follow that trend. But wait, I got news for you. That's not God's first plan for the priesthood. God's first plan at the priesthood was at the beginning of the Passover, leaving Egypt. And when we look at that in Exodus 12, we've got to take a look at that. And obviously, in our society today, we're thinking that, well, obviously, the men were the ones that killed the lamb. Men were the ones that were the first priest, the head of the household. Well, let's take a look at what really happened. I mean, remember the story about Moses? Pharaoh heard that there were too many Israelites, and he was afraid that they might become a military threat. So they ordered the execution of the sons that were born. Every male child was thrown into the Nile. In other words, Moses, when he came back, some people say he was 40 years old. He was the only 40-year-old guy over there. Everyone was older than him. There were no other men. And do you think that the Egyptian taskmasters stopped at just killing the babies? No, I mean, basically, that put a verdict on every single male Israelite. Every Hebrew was beaten. A lot of them were beaten to death. Totally legal. A lot of them were killed outright. Totally legal. They were reducing the male population so they would not be a military threat. I mean, you look at the movies, you look at Hollywood and all that stuff, it shows all the men hauling all those stones and doing all that work and everything. But you read the Bible, they stopped making men. The Egyptians persecuted the men. The Egyptians killed the men. There were fewer and fewer and fewer men. By the time Moses came around 40 years later, he was probably leading a greater number of women than there were men. Think about that. I mean, that's reality. That's the Bible blended with authentic history. And a little bit of common sense. So we're going to take a look at Exodus 12, this first Passover, and see how Moses explained this to Israel. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your account for the lambs. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out of the sheep, or for the goats, and ye shall keep it unto the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. Now basically there's two things here. They had to pick out this lamb on the first day of the month, and they had to keep it for 14 days. Why? Well, they had to learn how to care for that lamb, take care of it. That lamb was different. And they had to look at that lamb for 14 days and know they had to wind up killing it on the 14th day. Then, of course, they had to take the blood, put it on the side of the doorpost, and then they had to eat the lamb. All right, we're going to take a look at a couple of words here. First of all, he spoke unto the entire congregation. Now, this word congregation is used in the 3rd and 6th verse. And to take a look at this, we got to go back onto the King James. And here's the word congregation, 3rd verse, it's 57:12. And when we go down to the 6th verse, got to make sure it's saying 57:12, so it doesn't matter which one of these we pick. We're going to go to the dictionary and see what the Hebrew dictionary is for this word. It's a feminine of 5707. Why would it be a feminine? Interesting. Okay. In the original sense of fixture, a stated assemblage, specifically a concourse or generally a family or crowd. Okay. And it's translated assembly, company, congregation, multitude, people, swarm. And it's taken from this word, 5707. We got to take a look at this. This is from 5749. Contracted. A witness. Abstractly, a testimony. Specifically, a recorder. This is that is prince. And it's translated as the word witness. 5749 we got to take a look at too, because it comes from this is probably the base word, and when you're going to use a concordance, oftentimes you want to get to the primitive root. This is what we're looking for. To duplicate or repeat, by implication to protect, to testify. Okay. Intensely, to recompass, to restore. Admonish, to charge. Earnestly, to flip up, to protest, to call, to record, to relieve, to rob solemnly, stand upright, testify, give warning, and it also includes English words such as bear, call, give, take, and a witness. So basically he's calling it a congregation of Israel. Congregation of Israel is known as God's witness. Why did God create all those miracles and do all that stuff and everything? He needed witnesses. I mean, they had to go to the promised land. They didn't directly walk across to the promised land. They had to go up and down and through all these different countries and everything else. They didn't take the direct route. They had to go to, back then it was pretty much the known world, and witness. Pretty simple. So speak on to all the congregation of witnesses of Israel. And then some people are going to say, it says, shall take to them every man a lamb. Oh, okay, we're going to take a look at this verse 3 a little bit deeper with the King James Plus. And it says, you shall take of them every man. Oh, man, the word man isn't even in there. It's to them every man. This is translated, every man, from one single Hebrew word, meaning, I'm going to flip over to this one. It's getting a little bit more in depth than I thought it was. Contracted from H582. We're going to take a look at that. Or perhaps rather from an unused root, meaning to be extent. Okay, a man is an individual or a male person, often used as an injunction to a more definite term. An injunction. And in such cases, frequently not expressed in translation. Frequently not expressed in translation. Also, another, any. In the parentheses, the old King James guys decided to put in any includes man. The Hebrew translation is any. English translation is man. A certain plus a companion. The consent, each, every one. A fellow. Okay. It could be a man. Typically, when you go into this, they're going to translate this as a husband, or a man, or a person, or a steward. We got to realize, translate it. Hebrew to English. Okay, so this ish is taken from 582. And we're going to take a look at this 582. And we're going to get a little bit deeper in this. We're going to dig into this until we find an answer. That's what Bible study is all about. Okay, this is taken from H605, properly a mortal, and thus differing from the more defined H120, hence a man in general. It is often unexpressed in the English version. Now we got to pay attention to this. Often unexpressed in the English version. In other words, we're not even getting back to the root word of this. It's we're just going back from the word it was derived from, being mortal. They don't use the word mortal in the King James Bible. I don't even think the word mortal was in the King James Bible. The thing about it is they had this tendency of going right over to the man. Okay, especially when used in opposition with another word, another bloodthirsty, certain, divers, fellow, in the flower of their age, husband, man, people. Okay. Now here we go. It's often, properly, it's immortal. H605. We're going to take a look at this. This is the primitive root. To be frail, feeble, melancholy, sick and woeful. Okay, so when we get to the primitive root, we're talking about a sick, frail, and feeble mortal. Well, compared to God, wouldn't that pretty much describe mankind as a whole? Okay. So when we get back to this translation over here, and we're going to stick to King James. Speak unto the congregation. Now, we know this is witnesses of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of the month they shall take of them every feeble being, feeble mortal, a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. Now, does this word man, do we go with the translation of, yeah, it has to be a man? Even though we know, common sense would tell us that by then, 40 years after killing off the males in Israel, that most households would pretty much be run by women. Now you gotta ask yourself, is the God you serve the kind of God that would say, well, you know, I'm going to kill all the firstborn sons, and hey, sorry about that. If you don't have a man to be a priest in the household, which there hasn't been a man for 40 years, you're going to wind up losing them. And we don't know. This is 40 years later. But don't forget, we got to take the Bible for what it says, and we have to put all the facts together. The firstborn male. We're not going to argue that point. It was the firstborn son. All right? That means somewhere in that 40-year period, they stopped killing off the men. Of course, Israel had to leave with a certain amount of men, let's say in their 20s, maybe even into their 30s. They had to be fighting men. They had to be warriors. I mean, they had to fight battles. Whew. So, there were men in there. There were young men. But what about that 10 to 20-year gap? You think God would have just eliminated that? What do you think? Well, wait a second. They wouldn't have had an older son. The older son would have been over 40 years old. You know, that's a possibility. But we have to put this back into the context of the Bible, and you got to ask yourself. But first of all, you got to learn how to look into the facts. You cannot read something in there and like we saw in First Timothy and say the husband of one wife, oh, it has to be a husband. It has to be a man. No, because it would be pretty stupid for Paul to say, or a wife of one husband. Man, that would have been a major mistake for Paul to write. And when we're talking back in Exodus, we'll take a look at this congregation. We have to consider the fact, what happens to the households with no older male members? What happens to the household where the women had to stand up and be the witness, to tell the stories, to keep the family together? Don't forget, this is all included in that definition of man. She had to take on these attributes. As a matter of fact, the definition for man, a woman would have had those attributes also. And this is really the first priest. And we can get into later on when just before they read the commandments, God read the commandments, he offered the priesthood the entire congregation of Israel. Go ahead and check that out. He wanted to have a nation of priests, or kingdom of priests. I think it was a nation of priests. Let's see if I can quick search this here. Nation and priest. And see if we can find this in the King James. Okay. Exodus 19, we're going to jump up to. And you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak unto the children of Israel. Okay, let's back up. Don't forget, we were just going through with this witness thing. The congregation. You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if you obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then you shall be a particular treasure unto me above all people, and all the earth is mine. And you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak unto the children of Israel. Well, there's nothing in here when God sets out plan A. We're going to have a whole kingdom of priests. Nothing in here about just men. So when we go on to Aaron and the priesthood, that was plan B. That's because Israel as a whole turned down this offer to be a kingdom of priests. They wanted God to speak to Moses and Moses to speak to them. They wanted to put someone between themselves and God. And what does a priest do today? He does the same thing. He puts himself between the congregation and the church and God. Is that right? No, that's God's plan B. I mean, come on, Christ died to get rid of this plan B, to fulfill it. To go back to God's plan A. That included women too. And we already looked back and we looked at the definition, the witness. That would cover both men and women. So number one, we got to redefine what does a priest do? It's a witness. God was looking for witnesses. He wasn't looking for people to run the whole show and do the finances and order the light bulbs and the toilet paper and decide what color the carpeting was and when to buy a bigger screen and put sermons together and all this other stuff. He was looking for witnesses, one-on-one witnesses to go out into the world. And you read Paul, you read the New Testament, plan A is back in effect, but too many of these churches are living back in plan B still because they think it's better. They're just like the congregation that turned down God's offer in Exodus 19. So, can women be a pastor? Okay, this is something I like doing here, just to prove a point, because this is really okay, so we're going to search in the entire Bible. We're going to do the King James, and we come up, we search pastor. For some reason, this is only coming up with Jeremiah 17. Ask for me, could I have hastened from being a pastor to follow you. Neither have I desire the woeful day. And you know that which came out of my lips was right before thee. Okay, I'm going to search pastors. I don't think this is going to come up with anything else. Oh, okay, we're coming up with a couple more. Basically, you can read Jeremiah and find out what they say about pastors. But when we get to the New Testament, and this is pretty cool, well, that's only listing one. So pastor is only used once in the Bible. Pastor is a singular. And it's used found in 7 verses with 7 matches in Jeremiah. And in the New Testament, the word pastors is only found once. And we're going to take a look at that. We're going to look at the definition of being a pastor. And he gave some apostles and some prophets and some evangelists and some pastors and teachers for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ, till we all come in the unity of faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, unto a perfect man, unto the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. Now, you gotta ask yourself, is this only for men to come into the fullness of Christ? Are only men able to understand the knowledge of the Son of God? Are only men able to perfect the saints? Let's go back to that first Passover. How many of those households had to be run by women? How many of those households were held together by women. Well, the work of the ministry. This is what I'm not even going to get into. Well, anyway, this thing likes to flip around. This goes in too many different directions, but for the edifying of the body of Christ. When we look at the edifying of the body of Christ, is that only open to men, or is it actually open to women? So you got to ask yourself. This is the only verse that contains the word pastors here. So, we got to look at this, and we got to think, well, is it really worth arguing about one verse in the entire New Testament? One word? The only place is used in the New Testament? Come on, get real. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the study. It's Dennis from Advent Bible Study. And I should take a moment to pause and take a look at the website here. I got a lot of studies. Most of my studies just deal with the simple process of teaching people how to study using some simple methods. And some of these studies go so far in depth that it actually proves that only God could have written the Bible. So you can take a look at some of these. It's broken down into the legal things that you got to put on these websites nowadays. Okay, Bible study rules of context. What is Bible study? Keywords and understanding all parables, patterns in the Bible, introductions and summaries. How does God communicate with us? We look at Bible translations. We got some information on eSword. You want to write a book? Here's self-publishing, the easy way, step-by-step process. You can search books. And we got a little thing here, the missing rib, how to study using the concordance. Got the website broken down to the books of Moses. And I'm not even close to posting 1/10 of what I've written, but hey, give me a few more years, I'll get it on here. We got Samuel, Kings and Chronicles, Ezra, and Nehemiah, and Job. We got Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastics, and Song of Solomon, which as soon as I get this updated, there's probably about 10 or 15 more studies on Psalms. Daniel, I got videos on Daniel. You can take a look at them. And don't forget to, I don't know what it is, follow on YouTube or whatever, and keep up with all the latest updates. We got Major Prophets. Of course, everybody likes to get into Daniel. There's some pretty good studies on Daniel in here. We got the Gospels and Acts. We got a lot of Gospels on Acts, and more's been added. That'll be edited as drop down. We got New Testament books. Got an entire book written on Romans. And of course we got Revelation. I gotta tell you, I hate studying prophecy. I do not appreciate prophecy at all. But what I do is I went through the book of Revelation verse by verse, going from one to the other, show how one chapter is related to the previous chapter, or how it's written as a book. It's not made to be sliced and diced up and one verse used to prove this or prove that. No, it's revelation from Jesus Christ to the people, and only his people can understand it. It's important. I'm going to do some other videos on that later on. And of course we got the bookstore. Oh, I can shop the books. And I got a little study on the laws of the prophets, because a lot of people ask about that one. And I might even make a video on that. But Hope you visit the website. Hope you buy some books. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry I don't have any real flashy introduction or ending, but I just like to get to the facts, man.